Okay. Took me a couple of seconds to find the go live button, but there it is. All right, we are underway. Let's see who all we got here. Commander K, Admiral Crunch. Good to see you. Purring Lady from up there in the UP. Mike Newby, Billy Leland, RT Scott. Bookworm, Darla Allred, P. Sims. Wondering about opinions on Lodge Cast Iron. Well, we'll get to that in a second. Northeast Vermonter, Six Drops, Corey Clark. Good to see you guys. Mike Newby, Ron Hamby, Raymond. I think that's everybody that's here so far. Lodge Cast Iron. The new Lodge, I mean, it's decent cast iron. It's got that kind of pebbly texture to it that a lot of people aren't overly fond of. But it's a real good starter if you're interested in cast iron, you never tried it before, and you want to try it out and see how it's what it's all about. I mean, some people never quite get the hang of it, but it's inexpensive. It's easily available. I mean, you can get it at pretty much anywhere that sells pots and pans, housewares, anything of that sort. Walmart, Target, you name it. They're they carry it. And a number 8, 10.5 inch, your usual big size skillet goes for about $25, so it's not going to cost you a lot. And a lot of people, like it and they stick with it. It is fairly heavy for what it is. I mean, it's fairly hefty stuff, and like I said, it has that rougher texture to it. But it's good. It's pretty good. It's good value for the money. And the vintage Lodge is nice and smooth. It's a little bit heavier than other brands, but it always has been right from the start. I mean, they've been in business since about 1900. And, they've always been a little bit heavier than a lot of the other ones out there, but some people prefer heavier cast iron than to the lighter. And like I said, a lot of the vintage Lodge is still fairly inexpensive. And it's nice and smooth. It's machined on the inside. So you're not gonna go really far wrong with it. If you buy a new Lodge pan and you find you like cooking on cast iron, you can branch out from there, and you're not out a whole lot of money for it. Like I said, it's fairly inexpensive and it's pretty good quality for what it is. Yeah, the 1-notch and 3-notch Lodge skillets are they're real nice to cook on. They're machined inside, nice and smooth, and they're still pretty inexpensive. A lot of times you can find them in secondhand shops because for most of their history, Lodge didn't mark their, they didn't put their brand name on their cast iron. So, a lot of unbranded stuff goes a lot cheaper than something that's, obviously Griswold or Wagner or something like that. So you can get it pretty reasonable usually. Yeah, old Lodge is awesome. 1-notch, 3-notch. Yeah, that's referring to Lodge always had a heat, and that dog's got to start. Lodge has always had a heat ring on their skillets until recently when they went from a raised heat ring to a sunken groove, which is kind of a cool idea. Still looks like a heat ring, but it sits flat on glass top stoves. But they had notches in their heat ring, and that's how you would that was kind of their trademark and made them easier to identify. I just have 3 I think are worth your time watching. Me, Cast Iron Cooking, really good info from him, and Cast Iron Chaos. Kind of up and down, lose interest sometimes, a little grumpy. Oh, my thing from Billy Lee should be coming Thursday. That's nice. Can't wait to see that. Play around with that thing. Morgan Freedom. She's a corpse. Let's see here. When you say rougher texture, are you talking about the grain structure? No, the modern Lodge, they stopped machining the insides of their skillets, in the early 80s, mid 80s or so. They just quit doing that. it saved time, saved money, skipped a step, because most smooth cast iron pans, like Wagner, Griswold, something like that, as they're cast, they have a bit of roughness to them, from the texture of the casting sand. So they would grind that down and grind the insides of the pan smooth. Well, Lodge quit doing that in the 80s, and now it has a sort of a pebbly texture. It's not really rough and gritty and sandpapery like some of the really cheap bad cast iron things, but it's got a definite, it doesn't really feel rough, but it's got a pebbly kind of texture to it from the casting sand, and that's what they mean by the rougher texture. Ahmed, it's getting ahead on me. Ahmed Jr., things are going good. Robin, good to see you. Janet Batista. I gotta let that dog in here. Collect all makes cast iron, but usually only cook in BSR. Yeah, Birmingham Stove and Range is another real good one. And again, a lot of those are fairly inexpensive, especially when you find them in secondhand stores, because they weren't marked BSR. And I'll be right back here in a second. Let me let that idiot dog in. Come on, you yapping moron. Come on. Barking because you want in. No, you don't want to. I don't need you in. You're too much of a pain. Okay, here we are. I had to let the little dog in, but I'll leave the big dog out for now because he's too much of a pain to be climbing all over me. Pretty new to cast iron. Most of your iron is Modern Lodge. Yeah, I mean, it works good. And like I said, it's, real good value for the price. Loretta Comer, good to see you. Waiting to find a Griswold. I'm on the hunt. They're out there. I mean, you can find them, find them cheaper. Antique stores usually have some, but you'll pay a full retail price for them. But if you really want one, that's a good source for a lot of stuff. What's the oldest pan in my collection? I have a gate marked skillet, probably from the 1880s. The oldest thing I have is actually, I can't quite reach it from here, but I have a Fox Ellen Jones waffle iron. That's from about 1870 or so. And I have a Jewett and Root big kettle. And that's sometime between 1845 and 1875. So I do have some fairly old stuff. Yeah, of all your pans, you prefer BSR. Yeah, they're nice. I mean, they cook good. And they're a little on the heavier side, too. Some foundries have the selling point. Yes, we have heavier cast iron, just because some people like heavier iron. Been using a 12-inch Lodge a lot recently and really like it. Yeah, they're nice. But anyway, did a little bit of aluminum polishing this week. Let me show you this. That's that kettle I showed you before. I think that turned out pretty good. Not perfectly mirror shiny. I gotta probably polish it over one more time if I want it really mirror shine. Didn't do anything to the bottom, just sanded that lightly to get the old crusty stuff off. But you can see that's a Wagner Ware Puritan, patented August 1924. And I really like that style. It's more, I have a couple of I have a Wagnerware and a Griswold. They call them colonial patterns, and they're very similar. And they're similar to this, but they're a little more rounded. This is a little more of a kind of an Art Deco angular look to it. And the handle is different. It's got that squared handle where the other ones are just kind of a arch. But yeah, I think that turned out pretty decent. I didn't do anything with the inside either, because if I use it, it's just going to get rusty anyway. But I did find out, kind of surprised, those rivets on the handle are actually copper. As I started cleaning and polishing on it, found out that they were copper because they just looked like they were steel or aluminum themselves. But that's pretty cool. I almost didn't polish it because by the time I got down to the 2000 grit, it had a real nice satin sheen to it. And I think I'll do that when I redo this lid. When I showed you, 4 different kind of stages of polishing on it. But I think with this, I'll just, I won't polish it, but I'll sand it down to 2000 grit sandpaper, because it gives it a real, like I said, a real nice satiny finish. It's really neat looking. But that's a project for another day. Is that heavy? No, it's aluminum, so it's pretty light for its size. I don't know what it weighs, a couple of pounds maybe. But yeah, it shined up real good. Like I said, if I want to get it really mirror finish, I'll have to give it one more going over with the aluminum polish. But it turned out pretty good. It's pretty reflective. You can see, reflections of things there between that and the light. But that's what you can do with old aluminum ware with a little bit of patience and time and effort. Would have been a lot faster if you had like a buffing wheel mounted on a bench grinder with a buffing compound, and you could have, once you got the initial couple of rounds of sanding with 400 and 600 grit, I could have went over it with that, and that would have really polished it up good too. Let's see here. Where was I? The kettle. Yeah. Let's see. Hey, Ms. French Twist, you caught me. All right, good to see you. And your hideous placed your sister's headstone on the wrong grave. Yeah, well, that's kind of stupid of them. It does happen though. But yeah, it's something you want to get corrected right away. What's my biggest skillet? The biggest one, I think I have a 15-inch Lodge. 15-inch Lodge. I got that. Bought it new. I don't know, must have been around late 80s, early 90s. It was when they first started coming out with their pre-seasoned stuff, and they were clearancing the they used to sell just bare iron up until that point, and once they switched over to selling all the pre-seasoned stuff, they started clearancing the unseasoned cast iron. So I got it fairly cheap. I mean, it was like 25-30% off. I think I paid $40 for it back then, or 30, something like that. It was a good bit cheaper than it was. And yeah, it's big. I mean, it's 15 inches. You don't have the drive to fix your aluminum china skillet. Yeah, I mean, it takes a while. It's not really difficult, but you're sitting there sanding on it, and have to go over it. See, I went with 400, then 600, then 1,000 grit, and then 1,500, and then finally 2,000. But once you get past the like 1,000 grit, it's a lot faster because you're not taking off the old oxidation and trying to get things smoothed out. It's just a matter of taking out the fine scratches from the last grade of sandpaper. So the last couple of sandings go pretty quick, but that'd be number 14 probably. I think it is. It's they didn't really they did put the size numbers on them, but in fact, give me a second here. I'll just grab it off the wall here quick. Make things a little bit easier. There we go. There it is. Yeah, that is a 14. They've changed the logo a bit since then. They still use the fried egg in the skillet, but they changed around it. Where down here it says, USA 14SK. There's a little heart, kind of a maker's mark on there, and they put that up around the logo now. More of a circular, everything right in the center. But yeah, that's a number 14, and I have a number 14 BSR too, which is a good bit lighter. That's a pretty hefty chunk of iron there, but I've used that quite a bit over the years. Set him aside. But yeah, that's what the Lodge logo looked like around 1990 or so. I have two of the new ones. Yeah, they still make those. They do make a bigger one. It's like a 17 or 18 inch, but it has two loop handles on it. It's more like a hotel skillet. Do I use anchors to hang my skillets? Years ago when I remodeled the kitchen, I had put a piece of 3/4 inch plywood behind the wall over there where everything's hanging. And that wall over there actually used to be an outside wall. And that's all rough cut 1-inch boards that we sheetrocked over. So I can just put a screw in the wall pretty much anywhere. So, but if you do want to hang cast iron on a wall, usually you'll hang them off. You'll put up a board and screw that into at least 2 or 3 studs, and then you can put your hooks or hangers on that. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but just trying to put a hollow wall drywall anchor in probably wouldn't hold anything bigger than number 3 or number 5, pretty small skillet. Something like that is, that's, like I said, that's pretty heavy pan. That's probably 8-10 pounds. So you definitely have to have it solidly mounted. And like I said, a lot of people, they'll put up a nice, pretty 1-inch board on the wall and screw to that. But like I said, make sure you get it screwed good into 2 or 3 studs. Do I have a Lodge pizza pan? No, I have some big round griddles, but I don't have a Lodge pizza pan. Let's see. Do I have an old Blacklock? No, I do have that ARC logo Lodge. Lodge used to put their name on it in the 1920s, and they quit that about 1930. But and I have a no-notch Lodge, has the raised number on the handle, which may or may not be Blacklock, because Blacklock didn't put their name on their skillets anyway. There are a few Dutch ovens out there where the lid says Blacklock on them, but The Blacklock foundry was owned by a guy named Lodge, and it burned down in, I think, 1908, 1909, and they rebuilt it and they renamed the company Lodge, but it was the same company. And the really early Lodge stuff, from the 1910 up until the early 1920s, was basically the same thing as Blacklock. There's no way of really telling which was made by Lodge, which was made by Blacklock, even though they're the same company. But a lot of people call the real early Lodge stuff Blacklock, whether it is or not. It's the same thing made by the same company, so I suppose technically you'd be right, but maybe not. Looking for a number 20 Griswold restaurant skillet. They do come around every now and then, but they go for ungodly prices when they do. I mean, a couple thousand easily for number 20 for the big restaurant hotel skillets. They usually call them restaurant skillets. There are ones that are like 18, 20 inches around. They usually had 2 loop handles on them, and they were made for frying up 15 orders of hash browns at a time, things like that in hotels and restaurants. But if you do find one, you'll be tickled to death, but you're going to pay for it. Yeah, I love the way the skillet's on the wall. Just love that. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty nice. I got a couple hanging. You can just kind of see, right? You can get myself pointing in the right direction here, right there. There, on camera. I got a couple hanging from the ceiling. I got one of my cauldrons. Then you can't really see it against the other ones. I have a couple of skillets hanging from the ceiling too. I got a coat hook. It's got a hook on both sides, and just screw that into the ceiling, and you can hang one on either side of it. Works out pretty slick. Got your tea kettle out. It's a Wagner. I saw on the auction site they had an aluminum Wagnerware coffee pot, and I was going to bid on it, and got busy and was at work, and I forgot all about it. So it went fairly cheap too. It's kind of a shame. Neat little coffee pot. It was a percolator. It had a ball-shaped glass, thing on top where it percolates. But I don't think it had any insides, but you could use pretty much any percolator guts for it. Yeah, 20s are kind of like a wok. Yeah, I'm going to do some cooking with my wok here pretty soon. Trying to find a couple of different recipes, something that I can do that doesn't take so long, that I can actually do it on a stream. Sunudo, nice to see ya. Mad because I had stuff to share like. Saturday found your very first Lodge hammered 1 notch, and found another 1 notch with nothing, not even the 7 under it. Huh. How common are raised single notch lodges with only raised mold marks, nothing else? They must be fairly scarce. I haven't really seen any, so I don't know for sure. I can't really say, but I haven't seen any. So, they're probably a lot less common than single notch lodges that have a size number on them or just a raised mold mark. And sometimes with with markings that they can get filled in with sand. So even if it was, even if it had a number 7 or number 8, whatever, on the pattern, when they take the pattern out of the sand before they pour it, sometimes a little bit of sand can get brushed into it and fill things in. I mean, I got a couple of skillets that have filled in letters, so we got a letter missing in the middle of it. They're kind of neat, but I don't know if they were actually made that way purposely or if it was just, an accidental thing in the casting process. If that's the case, they would be fairly scarce because it's not going to happen every time when you pull something out of the mold. I'm going to send some pictures of it. Yeah. I'll take a look at it and see. Neither looked worth picking up, but after you pulled it out of the lies, your eyes buck. Yeah, I mean it's always kind of fun when you take a chance on something, you get it cheap, and it's really grungy. You can't really tell what it is, and then you pull it out of the lie, and it's something really neat. I mean it's fun. That's part of the fun of hunting around and collecting stuff. It's 6 o'clock. There's a small raised J and metal beside it. Yeah, I mean I'll take a look at it and see. I mean it could be, like I said, it could be something where a little bit of sand filled in the number on it, or it might have been a really worn out pattern where the numbers are so worn that they just didn't make a decent impression in the mold. No spin, no rock or wobble. Well, that's good. But a little bit of warpage, a little bit of wobble doesn't really affect it as far as cooking it. I mean, it can affect the value for a collector, but that, like I said, I've always said that can work in your favor. If you're just looking for something nice and you want to actually use it, you can talk the price down a bit if it's got a little bit of a wobble to it. That's what happened with your number 5 with the Ghost Mark IV. Yeah, and it might have been mismarked. I mean, there are known examples of factory mistakes where they've gotten letters in wrong order, misspelled. Somebody misspelled the word Griswold once on a pan in the Monday morning skillet where they put the logo plate on upside down. There's quite a few different known errors out there, and you come across them every now and then. Then Wagner has some where they used old ARC logo patterns, but they put the 4-digit catalog number on it. So it's kind of an anachronism because they put the catalog numbers on in 1924, and by then they had phased out the old style ARC logo. So all of a sudden you see one that's made after 1924 with the ARC logo on it. It's because they cleaned out their pattern room, found a bunch of patterns that were still in pretty good shape, and decided, well, we'll put the catalog number on it and use these until they're worn out because it costs money to make patterns. Fish head. Always good to see you. I appreciate what I do now with my cooking videos. Miss my older vids. Well, you move on. Things change. I have such nice voice and delivery. Now I got to go cook up dinner for the wife and me. Well, you cook up your dinner and hope it turns out nice. What made me interested in all this? I pretty much always used cast iron, and I just started finding a few pieces here and there that were pretty neat, and just kind of grew from there. It wasn't really all of a sudden, hey, I think I'll get into playing with cast iron. We'll start out trying to identify a couple of older things that the wife and I had pretty much always had, and it just took off from there. You use your cast iron? Yeah, so do I. I mean, I make a point of the stuff that I have that's already restored and usable, of kind of rotating through and making sure everything gets used at least once in a while, because that really does help to keep cast iron in good shape. I mean, it adds a little bit more to the seasoning. You get it cleaned up and keeps them in top condition. So yeah, I mean, I'm using 100-year-old cast iron things all the time, and I'm using newer stuff too. So yeah, go ahead and use your cast iron. I mean, there's nothing that I have right now that I don't use or wouldn't use. I mean, I can see there's a few things that are really rare. If you found one, if you got if I got hold of a old Griswold skillet that still had the original paper label on it, no, I wouldn't use that. But other than that, pretty much anything cast iron can be used. Sent the picture. Check it out. It's first for me. Okay, I'll get to that here in just a second. You name your cast iron. Yeah, a lot of people do. Especially they got some old heirloom piece from their great grandma. I have a fajita pan. No markings in the handle. Looks like it's a separate piece. Any ideas? Not offhand. A lot of the fajita pans are pretty inexpensive. They're made in China. Lodge and Wagner. I don't know if Griswold did or not. They also made oval skillets way back when. They didn't call them fajita pans back then, but that's pretty much what they were. So I mean, it could be most likely it's something imported. Because Lodge fajita pans are usually marked, and so are the Wagner ones. But handle a separate piece. You see that once in a while. I have it's a favorite uh, Abelskever pan, and that has a separate handle that's riveted on with a big rivet, and they're unmarked otherwise. But you can tell it's a favorite because it has a separate handle that's riveted on. Have your parents cast iron? Want to know more about them? Yeah, that's kind of. I think suspect a lot of people start like that. They get some old cast iron from ma or grandma or something like that, and they start looking around, researching it, trying to find out what it is, what it's worth, and it gets to be a fascination after a while. And let me look quick at that picture here. Get over to my email. Wait for me to sign in. Bring that up quick. I don't know if I can share it, but I can have a look at it anyway. Let's see. Huh. Yeah, it's definitely a one-notch lodge. Just trying to see if I can get a little closer. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any ghost mark on it that I can see. In the Z, that's a maker's mark, because a lot of the foundries, they paid by piecework, however many pans you could cast in a day, and the guys doing it would put their initial or a mark of some kind, stamp it on the mold, and that's why they got that little raised Z, because they press a little stamp into the sand, so you get a sunken Z on the sand and a raised Z on the pan. Yeah, it looks nice. But yeah, that might just have never had a size number on it. It might have been hand scribed at one time real lightly, because a lot of the one notch lodge like that, they they hand scribed the numbers on the back of the patterns, and it might not have been very deeply cut to begin with, and it might have worn off. But yeah, that's different. I haven't seen one quite like that, and from the picture, I can't see any sign of a ghost mark, like it was there and worn off. But it's pretty interesting. You come across oddities like that every now and then, and that kind of makes it fun. There's seams around the handle, not on the base one piece though. Yeah, I mean, I don't really, is it real smooth? I mean, if it's, rough and grainy or really smooth, that would depend. I mean, the Lodge, they have that pebbly, grainy texture to it, but they're not rough. And the Wagner ones, those are usually pretty smooth. If it's rough, it might be imported. Cooking bacon in your number 8, seasoning 5 times the grape seed, frying a couple of eggs, cooking a lot of bacon, then cooking an apple cobbler. What's going on? Season started getting lighter after packing the cobbler. Uh, it's probably lifting a little bit of seasoning. A lot of fruit is kind of acidic, and acids will kind of lift off the seasoning a bit. It shouldn't be a problem. Just keep using it, and it'll build back up. But more than likely, it's from the apples themselves. The acid in them kind of lightening things up. I can't see even the slightest ghost mark either. It's a size 7, pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a definite answer for you. It could have been, like I said, really lightly scribed to begin with, and after a few uses, it just wore off completely. Or it might have never been marked. I mean, I don't. But yeah, that's definitely a one-notch Lodge. But yeah, it's kind of it's fun finding cool little odds and odd things like that. I have a few splotches that appears when I try and do a mini stovetop season. Huh. Sometimes it doesn't. Seasoning doesn't really take up real evenly all the time. But usually as you use it, it it'll even out and darken up. So it's usually not a problem as long as nothing's sticking to it. It's mostly it's purely cosmetic. As long as nothing's sticking to it and you actually have seasoning there. But like I said, over time it should even out as you use it more. Especially if it's something that you had just refinished and just reseasoned. It takes a while for it to really get the carbon really ingrained into the iron and really darken it. I got one of those swan down cake flour pans off eBay that's used up. Got the side doors freed up when I clean up. I'm going to try that recipe. Ah, cool. Yeah, that's a neat little pan. I mean, that is really something cool. I don't have a ghost either. Went stood out in the sun. Your Atlantic doesn't have a damper on the chimney pipe, does yours? Yeah, mine does. There's a damper in. I put a damper in the stovepipe. You can put one on if you. Wait a minute here. Does the on yours does the stovepipe come out kind of in the middle on the back on the cooking surface? A lot of them didn't have dampers in them originally, but you can put a damper in higher up, which is kind of a pain. But because some stoves the stovepipe came out in front of that back piece. You can see the white back piece between the warming ovens and the top. And the stovepipe actually ran up through the warming ovens, which helped warm them even more. But yeah, mine does. I do have a damper in the stovepipe because the pipe on mine comes out in the back and then goes up. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about removing the splotches. Just just keep using it like you normally will, and that usually they'll usually even out. What foods do you cook to build up your seasoning? Potatoes work real good. Frying potatoes because they'll shed starch, and that starch will get ingrained into the surface of the iron, and it'll carbonize. And seasoning isn't just building up layers and layers and layers of baked on oil. It's actually, you know, it's actually several parts of it. First, you'll get when you first do it, you're coating it. You're getting a base coat on there that's basically baked on oil. Over time, it'll pick up particles of food, starch, whatever, and that'll get worked into the surface. And eventually the oil itself or the other particles will carbonize. They'll turn basically just to charcoal. And that seals up the surface. And there's, you're constantly adding new oil to it. You're constantly wearing away old seasoning, but the real deep seasoning is mostly carbon embedded in the surface and a thin layer of oil that's polymerized. It's basically turned to like varnish. That kind of seals up the surface. So you're not going to be able to, unless you scrub everything down to bare metal again, you're not really going to get splotches out, but you can, eventually they'll fill them in, and eventually it'll all even out. What's the best wood to burn in a wood cook stove? Oak is probably the best. Oak and hard maple works good, because it holds a fire a lot longer, and you get a lot of heat. You really shouldn't burn things like pine, because pine makes a lot of soot, a lot of creosote, and you get a lot of creosote in your chimney, you have a risk of a chimney fire. A little bit of pine for kindling when you're first starting off is okay, but using it full time isn't really a good idea in any wood stove. But basically any good, heavy hardwood works good in them. Oak, maple, depends on what part of the country, and cherry works good. I've gotten a few bits of cherry here and there in my firewood pile because a lot of the wood I get is from a guy who has a flooring mill, and some of the smaller limbs they'll throw them in the wood pile, and that really burns good. Hickory is good if you got a lot of hickory around your area. Birch is okay. It's not as dense as oak or maple. It'll burn up faster. You're allergic to potatoes. Pretty much anything starchy. If you can't use potatoes, anything starchy, the first couple of times, it'll really help to seal them up good. That has two vents on the stove, on the side, one for the stove, one for the oven. That's a little different layout. But yeah, like a lot of them didn't. It was tough to put a damper in the stovepipe depending on where the stovepipes come out. So, and a lot of the newer ones too, they're a lot more airtight, and they regulate them more just with the air dampers on the stove, on the firebox. So you can, if you can get it somewhere where you can actually reach the damper, you can put a damper in your stovepipe if you don't already. But if it works good without it, go ahead and keep on using it. I found a number 12 Lodge with lid Dutch oven with a heat ring. Made in USA. Didn't know they exist with heat ring. $40. Ah, cool. Lodge made a bunch of different styles of Dutch ovens. They made the regular Dutch ovens for your using in your oven, and they made a lot of camp ovens that have a raised rim on the lid so you can pile coals on it. And they made some that had feet. You had 3 legs on them. Again, they were mostly for fire, cooking in an open fire. Which I don't trying to remember if they usually had heat rings on Lodge Dutch ovens or not. I don't think so. You have a number 5 favorite cookware and a smaller one. Never looked at the make. Huh. Yeah, favorites are they're nice pans. I mean, they cook real nice. They're pretty popular with collectors. A lot of people really collect them, so they're worth a pretty good bit of money. And seeing as how they've been out of business since like 1935, 36, you're not going to be making any more. Found a Griswold stove damper. Is that an ornament or useful? It's useful, but you won't be able to see what it is. I mean, most people use it for ornaments. I know I have one that's complete that has the spindle and everything on it, and I think I have another one that doesn't have a spindle. Then I got a couple other old ones that I've always had laying around, which I'll have to kind of clean them up one of these days and see. Yeah, most people use them, ornamental, so you can see what it is. But Griswold made a lot of different cast iron things. I mean, there's Griswold cast iron mailboxes out there. They made some electrical appliances in the mostly back in the 20s, 30s. They made some electrical stuff. But if you look through the catalogs, yeah, there's tons of different things that Griswold made. Made out of cast iron besides just cookware. Not as heavy as the other 12. Like it better as far as weight. I hope I love it. Yeah. Too heavy. Yeah, some of the like I said, a lot of the lodge stuff nowadays is heavier than it used to be, even, and they've always been a bit heavy. Hedge and walnut never burn in a fireplace. Yeah, some woods really snap and crackle in an open fireplace, which can be a pain. But you love cherry smoked burgers. Yeah, I use a lot of cherry wood for smoking because I've got wild cherry trees around here, and it's not hard to get a hold of, and it gives it a real, I mean, you can, when you burn cherry, you can smell it. It's got a real nice smell to it, and that really picks up in the meat when you smoke with it. One more thing. I have a waffle iron in Sydney. The paddle's corroded. What do I do? Uh, there's not much you can do to really fix pitting. I mean, you can clean it up and scrub it, but once it's got, you know, usually it's sulfur pitting. It comes from using them over a coal fire because coal had quite a bit of sulfur in it, and the sulfur would corrode, and that's why you see the back of a lot of really old pans. They'll have a circle that's got some deep pitting on it, and there's nothing you can really do to get rid of that. You just got to live with it. As for corrosion on the inside, if it's rust pitting on the surface where the waffle is, you can scrub that with a wire brush and you can get it smoothed out enough that you can use it anyway. Found out your stove was made in 1920. Just wondered how old she was. Yeah, this one, there's a patent date on the little heat dial on the oven door, and that says patented 1924. So this was made after 1924, probably late 20s into the 30s. And this is one out of a Sears catalog because the nameplate on it said it's an All American, which was probably made by American Stove in Shakopee, Minnesota. But it says the world's largest store, and that was a Sears motto way back when. Wagner Ware, Sydney 01058M. Is it old? Probably be made before 1960. If it has the Wagner Ware logo and it says made in USA, it was made after about 1964. If it has the logo and it's got the catalog number but doesn't say made in USA, it was made between 1924 and 1964. And with the catalog numbers on Wagner Ware, 105 is the code for a skillet and 8 is the size until you get to number 10. It goes 105.9 for number 9. Then a number 10 is 106.0. They just added the 10 to the end of it. And then from there, like a number 11 would be 1061. And that's how those work. And there's different, the first three numbers are different for different things. A Dutch oven is 105, I think, off the top of my head. I'm probably wrong on that. Do you know of a pricing catalog for any cast iron? The three main books, but they're so outdated price wise. Yeah, they are way out of date for the prices, and I don't really know of any current ones offhand. There might be something out there if you looked, but yeah, I don't know of any pricing catalogs offhand that are current or current enough. But at least with the prices being way outdated, you can get a pretty good idea of the relative rarity of things. If something is listed in there as $25 for a number 7, number 8, and number 9, but a number 10 is 75, you can bet that number 10s are pretty scarce. So nowadays, if a number 8 is going for $50, you can probably guess that a number 10 would be going for around 150. But it's not necessarily gonna work out quite right that way, but you get a good idea at least of the relative rarity of things. See you, Walnut. Nice to have you around. I like cooking over catalpa wood when you get it for the fire pit. Makes good coals, but not for indoor cook stoves. Yeah, we got a few catalpas around here, but they're mostly, planted for ornamental, just growing wild in the woods. We don't really have them, at least not up here. I'm a bit north of kind of the borderline of southern trees because hickory trees will grow in southern Wisconsin, but they don't grow up here. That's one of the kind of dividing lines. But a lot of the more southern trees like catalpas, they'll grow up here, but they don't really grow wild. Did I pick up anything good this week? No, I didn't get anything new, but like I said, I shined up I don't know if you saw that one, Sanudo. I shined up that Wagnerware kettle. Got that all polished. I'll show you that again. I'm proud of that. Turned out real nice. Your stove has one plate on top with 3 different sizes you can take off. Small, medium, large. Set the pan down in it. Yep. Yeah, that's what they're for. It's for different size pans. Two screws hanging out of them, no base. Oh, you mean it has the twisted wire handles? Kind of big spring looking handles. But yeah, the different sized lids nested together. Yeah, so you could use small, medium, and large pans on them. I saw those mailboxes this morning on this guy's channel. I can't remember his name. Got all kinds of grizzled. Yeah, like I said, they made tons of stuff. I mean, if you just flip through the the Griswold and Wagner book, some of the odds and ends that Wagner made or Griswold made, Wagner did too. They made quite a few other things, but it's kind of surprising sometimes. As long as you got a foundry there and you got guys who can make patterns for stuff, well, you might as well make anything that'll sell. Picked up a Wagner bunt pan the other day for $30. Well, that's a hell of a good deal because the cast iron bunt pans of any kind usually go anywhere from 75 to 125. Especially with the if it has a brand name on it, they go for $100 or better. So $30 for one's a hell of a good deal. Lots of locust in your area, good firewood. Yeah, there's some trees around here. I'm not sure what they are. They don't get very big. They only get maybe 6-8 inches around, but it's almost like an ironwood. It might be ironwood. Burns real slow, burns real hot, and no, the handles are gone. The paddles are perfect. Oh, yeah, you can make wooden handles. You can find them, and sometimes if you come across some broken up ones, paddles that are broken, got the knobs or got the hinge broke off on them, or it's just one by itself, and it has the wire handles. If you're real careful, you can unscrew I don't have a wire handled one handy. You know, a lot of times they're threaded into there if they had originally had the wire handles, and you can swap them. But you can make wooden handles that'll fit in the socket. You know, it takes a little bit of whittling. You know, if you know somebody that has a wood lathe, that'd be ideal. And if you turn it the right size, use really dry wood so it fits tight. And then when it absorbs a little bit of moisture from the air, it'll swell and fit in there tighter. But you can make wooden handles for them. It's not going to be original, but it'll be useful, and it'll be a lot better than not having any handles on it at all. They crumbled up wood now. Save you that locust berry, little smoke, and makes for a good still. Yeah, you don't want a big cloud of smoke around your still. It makes it easy for the revenuers to find. See a lot of "da" in the comments. Or am I a Youper? No, I'm from northern Wisconsin. The Youpers stole our accent. A Youper is from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the UP. Louisiana gal, good to see you. Walking encyclopedia on cast iron and old stoves. Well, thanks. You know, I mean, there's tons and tons of stuff I don't know yet, haven't come across. You know, but I do tend to try and learn and understand as much as I can about the stuff I have. What do you think about the Queen Atlantic stoves? I'd probably have to look at one and see. You know, I mean, I've used a few different kinds, but you know, I'm no expert on all the millions of different brand names out there. And there's a lot of different designs. I mean, there's a million different styles, different types. You know, different. You know, a lot of cook stoves are more like a pot-bellied stove, but they have a little cooktop on them with one or two eyes. You know, they're meant for cabins or for small houses, or you got, you know, the more traditional kind of range style like that has a big cooktop and an oven. And you know, there's lots of different types of them. You know, and it's you know, it's pretty interesting because a lot of stove companies made cast iron cookware as well. You know, like Favorite. I mean, they made the Favorite wood cook stoves, and a lot of stove companies would also make cast iron cookware, but they wouldn't put a brand name on it, especially back in the 1800s. And a lot of times they would add that as, you know, kind of an upsell or an incentive. Hey, you buy our stove, we'll throw in a kettle, a Dutch oven, and a frying pan, and a lid that fits all three. And even though it was made by, you know, such and such stove company, they didn't put their name on it. Like that Jewett and Root kettle that I have. Jewett and Root was actually a stove company, and they're one of the few. They made the only things that have their name on it are kettles, apart from their stoves, of course. But they made these hugely ornate parlor stoves, and so a lot of, you know, a good proportion, I'm sure, of the old gate marked cast iron stuff was probably made by stove companies because they had the furnaces and the foundries and the, you know, the ability to make these things. You know, like I said about Griswold, you know, it wasn't uncommon as long as you got the setup there to do it, to make other things out of iron, just because you can make other things and make a little bit more money with your company. What's my opinion on the outside vent for Vermont casting wood stove? What do you mean by the outside vent? You know, the stovepipe coming out of it, or you know, venting it out through the wall or through the roof. Given a Wagner 8-inch skillet marked Made in USA, G has a 5 on the handle. Small amount of rust. Yeah, well, hopefully you can get her back in shape. A little bit of rust isn't too hard. You know, sometimes if just light rust, it'll scrub off when you strip it down. Little vinegar bath, if you just got one or two, that'll take care of it. You know, mix up 50-50 vinegar and water solution, enough to cover it, let it soak for a few hours, scrub it off, let it soak for a few hours, scrub it off. And that'll get her stripped down good. You know, the Made in USA, you know, that was made in the made after 1964. Are waffle iron bases made in consistent sizes? Can irons exchange with other makers? Asking your friend. Uh, Not really, but sometimes they will interchange pretty good. The big thing is if it has tabs on the side of the waffle iron, you know, so when you flip it, it stops. Some tabs were at like 3 o'clock, and some were down more like 5 o'clock. And there's usually a notch in the base that'll accommodate the tab. So you got to kind of play around with that. Griswold made, I just showed you this. This is this here is a Alfred Anderson waffle iron, but Anderson was just the marketing company. These were actually made by Griswold, and they used regular Griswold bases, but this one it's got the Griswold 975 part number on it, but under that you see WI WI Company. That's Western Importing Company, which was the company behind Alfred Anderson. And so you can use Griswold bases on any of the Anderson Krumkaka irons, or they have heart-shaped waffle irons. I got one of those. And it's just kind of hit and miss, see if they'll try it and fit. But, the Griswold base like that does fit quite a few different makers. So it's kind of get on there. Stay. So it's kind of hit or miss. You just got to try and match them up. But, you take what you can get, I guess. If you can find a base, try your waffle iron on it and see if it fits. And even if it doesn't, if nothing else, you have a base that you can sell or trade with somebody else for a base that might fit. Will there be a show next week? I checked my schedule, and I'm damned if I can remember what it is. I think I'm off next Tuesday, so there should be, but I can't really say for sure right now. Tentatively, yes, but if there's not, I'll try and put up a notice ahead of time enough that you're not sitting there waiting and watching and wondering where I'm at. How many pieces of cast iron do I own? Last time I counted, I think it was 250. And I definitely got to get rid of some of them. An Empress Atlantic made in Maine, where you live. Yeah, I mean, those old stoves are nice. I mean, if you can find a lot of them around in antique shops that aren't really usable. You can clean them up and they look great in your kitchen. You can use them for cupboards. You can convert them, a lot of them, to a gas cooktop. To some degree, you can certainly do that. But if you want one you can actually cook with, you really got to look close at the condition of the firebox and the grates. Make sure that's all good. Make sure the flue where the stovepipe attaches is in good shape, in overall condition. Something that's got a lot of rust is really rusted out and is going to leak smoke is not something you want to actually use. But the prices are kind of all over on them. Usually something like this, like the one I got in working condition, they'll go for anywhere from $300 to $700, but some of the really old fancy ones, they had tons of scroll work and chrome and nickel plating on it. They can go for a couple, 3,000. So, if you're looking at a wood stove, definitely look it over close, make sure that it's still airtight and the firebox is good. And try not to pay too much for it. I mean, if you want something really fancy, you're going to pay a lot more for it. This is kind of a mid-range, when it was originally made, it was kind of a mid-range, not super fancy, but it's nice. So, but something like that you usually find pretty reasonable. Scored a Wagner fat-free fire and a Lodge bunt cake this weekend. Didn't have to give a kidney. That's nice. Those fat-free fryers are kind of cool. They're kind of like a cross between a skillet and a griddle. They had a flat cooking surface and they had kind of a gutter around the outside of them. The idea was you wouldn't have to use very much fat, and as the fat cooked out of something, it would run into the gutter. And they were big in the 30s and the 40s. Was when most of them were made. Up into the 50s, some even into the 70s. I've seen most wood stoves since watching these lives. They catch my eye every time. Ask prices and they give their sale pitch. I'll burn this whole town down. Yeah, and they still make wood cook stoves. I mean, they're the newer ones are a lot more airtight in the firebox, a lot more efficient, and because as far as using this for like a heat source or something like that, it's not hugely efficient. I mean, it's a relatively small fire, and it's not going to last very long. But they're great in the spring and fall around here when you don't need a big fire going all day long, but it's chilly at night, so you can just fire this up and burn for a few hours, warm the house up and let it burn out, and you're good for the rest of the night. But anyway, we've been at this for an hour. It's just about time to wrap this up. Like I said, it should be a show next week, but I'm not 100% positive. But I'm pretty sure I'm off Tuesday and Wednesday next week too. So if not, because I do know I'll be working 3 to 11 second shift. So if I'm working, there won't be. But like I said, I'll double check to make sure what my schedule is exactly, because I did look and I can't remember what the hell it is. And I didn't have sense enough to take a picture of it with my phone. The Grizz waffle iron bases does fit different bases, but the notches don't jive. Yeah, it's it's kind of hit or miss. I mean, you'll just have to try different bases. Then you might luck out and actually find a base for it. But anyhow, I'll see you guys next week, and thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully, see you next week. Like I said, I'll put up a little announcement once I know for sure what I'm doing. And hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you guys next time.